Welcome to the Put You On Game podcast. We are your hosts, Jared and Soji. Thank you so much for joining us today on whatever platform you're joining us with, whether that be Spotify or Apple Music. We're everywhere. And if you actually want to take a look at our beautiful mugs as we talk about our topics, you can catch us on YouTube. We'll put that in the description for you. And also, before I forget, make sure if you're listening to us on YouTube, you give us a like, a share, a subscribe. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you give us 5 stars. We really appreciate it. Come through and support your boys. And all right, Soji, man, I know this morning you listened to the new Silk Sonic song, Leave the Door Open. Just want to get your first impressions / a quick review from you on what you thought.
Yeah, bro. Leave the Door Open. Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars, two of my favorite artists out right now. Just doing another wonderful song. I love these guys. I love their energy. I love their creativity. I love how versatile and talented they are. And they really exemplify that on this song. I really love Pac as well as Bruno Mars and their ability to work with artists and do a whole like exchange back and forth thing. They're really both talented at doing collaborations, whether it's Anderson .Paak with artists like The Game or Kendrick Lamar, or even a Cordae, YBN Cordae versus, and then Bruno Mars showing his versatility, doing songs with Kodak Black and Gucci Mane, then going to Cardi B, and just his whole energy. Like they're so versatile, and they exemplify that whole back and forth dynamic on this song perfectly. And it's just good baby making music. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like, it is smooth, it is jazzy, it is everything that I hope that 2021 is gonna be. And I feel like they're that collab and that energy. I want to see more of that this year, personally.
Yeah, bro. Like, this joint is fire. like it's unreasonably good. Like when it turns on and like you just hear, like, it sounds like so warm, like how so many of the older songs from like the 60s and 70s sounded really just warm. Like it's such a warm song, and then it's so well produced. Like they went to some kind of special place to produce a song, because there's so many like intricate layers in the production. Anderson .Paak's drumming is crazy. Like we know he's like a great drummer. I think he's one of the best talents overall musically in music right now, but like his drumming on the song is like, it's crazy. And then also he has one of the most like swagger filled voices in music. Like the way that he says certain things, and just the tone of his voice, like it just oozes with like this level of confidence,
Yes.
And he's talking about the fillets.
Like he got that raspiness. He has that raspiness, but it's a raspiness that enhances his singing talent and doesn't distract or take away from it. And it always fascinates me, people who have odd sounding voices, but they still sound very good melodically, and they're able to still have a nice kind of pitch and just can deliver notes and really soulful sounds. Just that combination. Once I saw like, Pac and Bruno Mars are doing a song together, I know this is gonna be fire, and it didn't disappoint. And did you hear the intro, the Silk Sonic intro track?
Yeah, they got Bootsy Collins on there, so yeah, it's dope.
Woo. I thought that was the song for a second. I was like, Jesus. And then like, I need to hear like a 3-minute version of that intro. Like, that's what I really want to hear. So I hope they got an album coming, because they're a group now. So it's gonna be Silk Sonic is the group. So it's gonna be a dope collaboration, man. Like, it's so good to hear music like this, man. It just makes me like want to like grab my lady and hold her and like smell her neck or something, like I get the
it's so good. And then like obviously, like I mean, Bruno is, his voice is, he has one of the strongest voices in music as well. So him, like he was just
yeah.
gliding, like he was
Mm,
gliding all over it. Like it's just, and then like songs don't really have bridges like that anymore. So like their
right.
bridge at the end and the way that they layered their vocals together, and it's just, yeah, it's beautiful, man. I'm really really excited for the album. I was telling my lady that I hope it's like a Run the Jewels type situation, you know, Silk Sonic 1, Silk Sonic
Yeah.
2, Silk Sonic 3, because I'm gonna check for it. I hope it comes out every summer. I'll be checking. I'll be checking for some Silk Sonic music. But it was dope. A great
Yes,
track,
bro.
man.
Definitely a great track, but also a track that has seen some type of controversy lately. And you were telling me about that. What did you hear as far as the controversy for this song and this collaboration?
Uh, yeah, it's not just the song. As far as the controversy, it's a controversy connected to, you know, one of the bigger artists on the song, which is Bruno Mars. And it comes from many places. It comes from the internet, and it comes from Twitter, where reason, logic, and happiness go to die. But it it was it was they were basically making accusations that Bruno Mars is a cultural appropriator, and
Mm,
it's a it's an interesting argument because there's so much nuance to it. There's a writer who said in 2018, her name is I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's Saren Sensei. Excuse me if I butchered that, but
mm.
she said, quote, Bruno Mars is 100% a cultural appropriator. He is not black at all, and he plays up his racial ambiguity to cross genres. And I thought that was a interesting take, because the definition of cultural appropriation is the act of taking or using things from a culture that is not your own, especially without showing that you understand or respect this culture. Bruno also had a interview recently on the Breakfast Club where he was asked by Charlemagne about this, and he said, and I quote, "The only reason why I'm here is because of James Brown, is because of Prince, Michael Jackson. That's the only reason why I'm here. This music comes from love. If you can't hear that, then I don't know what to tell you." And Sensei, the writer, goes on to say in the 2018 article, what Bruno Mars does is he takes pre-existing work and he just completely word for word recreates it, extrapolates it. He does not change it. He does not improve upon it. He does not make it better. He's a karaoke singer. He's a wedding singer. He's the person you hire to do Michael Jackson and Prince covers. Yet Bruno Mars has an Album of the Year Grammy, and Prince never won an Album of the Year Grammy. So, I mean, that's a lot of heat right there.
Woo.
But to interject my personal opinion in there, after all
Yeah,
of these quotes, I just wanted to say that I think that Prince's lack of Grammys in terms of the Album of the Year Grammy, I think is far more indicative of the time than it is of his or Bruno's talent or their race, respectively. Because, you know, obviously
right.
Prince's peak was in the 80s and the early 90s. And I think it kind of goes without saying that he's one of the most talented musicians ever. He plays 20 plus instruments with incredible proficiency. If you look at any of his albums, most of them will say that they're written, produced, composed, I guess performed by Prince as well. Like he's a tour de force. So if he's not being acknowledged at that level, then it's not indicative of his talent. It's more indicative of an institution like the Grammys that's not properly recognizing the talent of Black artists. And they haven't been doing that until very recently, especially with them adding new categories.
And
So
just to interject right there as well, you're talking about the 80s, which was a decade that was owned by Michael Jackson. And so those two kind of going head to head in certain categories, that's really stark competition.
yeah, but
Um,
also like
but
with
also, yeah.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I just want to interject that point. Like, have a little kind of perspective of who the competition is at the time, along with along with the lack of appreciation that a lot of the, institutions that give out those awards had for African American artists. But yeah, please continue your point.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks to there only being so many spots. Like it's almost like the female rapper phenomenon, where like it, for whatever reason, they love to pit I shouldn't say female, women rappers against each other, like it, with the notion that there can only be like one of them. Like there can only be a Cardi B, there can only be a Nicki Minaj. They can't both be popular at the same time. So it's like it's that level of hypocrisy when there's plenty of other types of artists, of other races, of other genres, and where there's room enough for everybody. And I thought there was a stat that was very pertinent, and it says that only 10 Black artists since the Grammys' conception in 1957 have won Album of the Year, which is, I think, 60 plus years of only 10 artists winning Album of the Year. And I think just on its face, that statistic seems like there's nothing wrong because of the ratio of Black people to white people in this country and us being a minority. But when you consider the influence of Black music on all other kinds of music, like a rock and roll as an example, is
right.
It points out the level of injustice when it comes to Black artists being acknowledged. So as far as Bruno, I wanted to say that there's a conversation to be had about white audiences in particular being more accepting of Black culture than Black people. So there is some legitimacy to Bruno making Black music and being more acknowledged for it than a Black artist likely would. So there is that argument. But in my opinion, that isn't on Bruno Mars, because going back to the definition earlier that we discussed about cultural appropriation, he's given credit multiple times where credit is due. He's never been shy about his influences or where his music comes from. So I think that as long as you give credit, I think I don't think you can call it cultural appropriation. But yeah, go ahead. I want to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, and I really like how you laid it out. And so this is what's tricky about the internet, because I decided to do a quick Google search of cultural appropriation, and I found two different definitions, but there's very subtle differences. On Wikipedia, it says cultural appropriation is the adoption of an element of or elements of one culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. This can be controversial when members of a dominant culture appropriate from disadvantaged minority cultures. That's the first definition, right? And on the face, there's nothing that kind of hits you that says, oh, that's wrong. And then I found this other definition on dictionary.com. The unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc., of one people or society by members of another and typically more dominant people or society. And I think this definition is more spot on and precise. The unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption, where you're not giving credit, where you're not acknowledging, where you're not really, paying as well the people who allowed you to get to that place. By Bruno Mars saying, hey, this isn't me, this is everybody who came before me. I'm taking what they did and I'm making something beautiful for this generation and for people to enjoy. And I'm making something that is true to the sound. And I'm not trying to take away from that at all, or trying to make it seem like, hey, I'm some massive innovator. Bruno Mars knows who he is and where he gets his influences from. And I think he also makes that well known. I listened to an album like 24 Karat Magic, and you hear the New Jack Swing influences, as well as all the other influences from the 90s that he took. And it was very clear. And to me, it's like you said, give the credit where credit is due, and don't misappropriate cultural appropriation to people who are actually doing their best to give the credit where credit is due. And at the end of the day, it also shines a light back on the music that came before them, so people can kind of go back and listen to that music and say, oh, I understand where this influence came from. Oh, I hear that, and rediscover those artists from the past. And they can maybe get their flowers and their roses in the present, Right. I think anytime you're able to do that in reference, it is beneficial for all sides, right. Especially when you give you credit. That's what it's all about.
Of course, and I think that's a good argument as well. Speaking to expanding on people's knowledge of the artists that the music comes from, or even current artists, because I do think that working with someone like Anderson .Paak is good for both of them musically, but it's particularly good for Anderson .Paak in terms of like giving him his flowers, you know, because he is, like I said
Mm,
earlier, he is one of the best musicians in music. So I think that
definitely.
working with someone like Bruno Mars only serves to increase his profile because they're making similar kinds of music. Like if you listen to, you know, Silk Sonic, I think that Leave the Door Open could have went on Ventura. It could have went on 24 Karat Magic, you know? So like them
Right.
combining their respective musical talents, I think is beneficial for everyone. Because like I was watching YouTube reactions to the music video, which is was a great video. But because I just love to watch people react to things that I've already seen for whatever reason. That's my thing. But like
Yeah.
people almost treated it as though it was a Bruno Mars song. Like there were plenty of reactions that I
Mm,
watched where the reaction is like 12, 13 minutes long. They're watching the video, stopping and starting, and they don't mention Anderson .Paak's name not one time.
wow.
So it's like,
Even though he has the first verse.
yeah, and they're almost treating it like he was just mouthing Bruno's lyrics essentially, or they'll be like, "Who's that guy?" And it's like he's the guy that's in the title of the video. But like I said, that's part of, I think that's part of where the angst comes from, because there is
Yeah.
someone like Anderson .Paak who is I think that you can see that Bruno is like the quote unquote better singer, but I think that you can see that Anderson is like equally, if not more talented musician. So I think it's frustrating for a lot of people to see someone like
Right.
Bruno maybe being a larger force in the music industry as opposed to um, Anderson .Paak, who is growing, who is has a huge following and has a lot of influence, but isn't quite on the level of casual knowledge of a Bruno Mars. So I think there is some frustration
Right.
with people not people seeing a black artist and being like, oh well, why can't he be there? You know?
Right. And I totally get that frustration. Um, but at the end of the day, this rising tide elevates all ships. So,
Right.
you
Yeah, that's
know,
a good quote. Yeah.
you know, you know, Bruno being the juggernaut that he is on the Billboard charts, collaborating with someone like Anderson .Paak only goes further to elevate both of their musics, both of their albums, and brings more attention to everything that Anderson .Paak has been doing over the last decade. Like this man has dropped excellent project after project, has hit after hit. You know, I remember hearing Come Down on one of the finals commercial breaks a couple years ago. And I was like, yeah, man, Anderson .Paak is doing it big right now. Like his
Yeah.
song is featured on the NBA on TNT, which is a national platform. So, you know, all of this notoriety, he's getting his roses and he's getting the attention that he deserves now. So I'm just excited. Ultimately, I think it's good for music, and hey, a little controversy is good for the numbers as well, because people are going to be like,
Right.
hey, what's that all about? So
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing I also wanted to touch on was I think that we also have to give these artists room to grow and evolve, because I think if you look at Bruno Mars's career, especially at the beginning, the inception, like he was making pop music. He was making music that was a little like if you want to say that soul is wet, his music was pretty dry. I think that he came from an era where, especially like the early 2010s, we can point at a lot of artists where in order to make their careers, they had to make kinds of music where it wasn't necessarily like what fed their souls. It was what fed their families,
right,
you know? So in order to get to the
right,
place that he was,
that's
he
a good
had to
call.
make certain kinds of music. And I think that people saw what he was making before, the kind of pop music that he was making before, and they looked at something like a 24 Karat Magic and they thought that he was capitalizing on a trend, when in reality, like maybe it was more so that he was making the music that was closer to him because he had the opportunity to do so, because he had a fan base, you know, as opposed to if he would
Right,
have came out of the gates with that, he might not have had the success that he had, you know, now. He was able to
Right.
build that casual audience that likes, music that's, a little more surface level. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's music that you don't like. You don't necessarily have to look too deep into, or it's not hard to make. It's really like
Yeah.
it's really like a A plus B equals C type equation. But
Yeah.
I think that now he's closer to making the kind of music that he wants to make, and I think that some people are confusing that with him appropriating a culture rather than him just making the music that is closer to his actual sound.
Yeah, and I think that is a beautiful thing to see the progression of an artist through the years, to see them go from doing some generic, um, wash, rinse, repeat pop stuff to doing something more that is closer to their heart, like you said, and closer to what they actually want to do. Anytime an artist is truly able to express themselves as they feel, I love it. I love to see it, because you feel you connect with it more as an audience. I like Bruno Mars's old stuff, but can nobody tell me nothing about 24 Karat Magic not being one of the best albums I've heard that year, and one of my favorite albums of all time. Just start to finish, banger after banger. You can tell he bled his heart and soul into it. So yeah, I'm just excited to see what they both do, and the career trajectory that they have going forward, because I think they're gonna continue to grow and be huge.
Right.
And
Definitely.
yeah.
Well, we talked about artistry from one perspective in terms of artists and their intentions with making their music, but let's talk about another artist and his intentions in business. So I know this is a topic that you find interesting, so go ahead and cue us up, man.
So yes, the artist known as Jay-Z, Mr. Sean Carter, has sold his streaming service to Tidal to Square, a financial service company co-founded by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. Square has purchased Tidal for $297 million reportedly, and it will operate independently alongside Square's other ventures. And so what I found interesting about this, and a lot of the immediate reactions I got, was how could Jay-Z, this man that's talking all this Black empowerment stuff, releasing songs like Black Entrepreneur with Pharrell, and making you feel like, oh yeah, he's the owner, he's the CEO, he's trying to put artists on, turn around and sell the platform that he's been telling artists, hey, the music industry is not treating you guys correctly. We need to come here and make this business, build it the right way, and make sure that you're compensated correctly, as well as you have proper ownership of your music. How does that man who comes with that whole vision turn around and just sell the company? It's like, okay, are you being an entrepreneur, or are you being just not to be so harsh, but a sellout in a way? And I had a lot of mixed feelings, where I was like, man, he talks all that talk, but is he really about that life? And then I decided to go digging a little deeper, and I discovered that the deal hands control over to Square and Jack Dorsey, but the co-founders, Beyonce, Madonna, and Rihanna, they continue to be co-owners of Tidal, and they keep their remaining stakes. Okay. And then also, under the terms of the deal, Jay-Z will join Square's board of directors. And that's a footnote, but I think that is a really major key, because you don't see a lot of Black people on boards of directors of major companies. And so what Jay-Z did here is he sold his stake, he got his money, but he also got a seat at the table to decide the financial future of a company like Square, which is a financial company in terms of directing and operating finances, but peer-to-peer. And I think that's a very low-key rise up for a man that has a lot of low-key rise ups and is very entrepreneurially minded. And it makes him, it takes him from also making his money, but also being in a position to actually control the fate of Tidal from the board of directors side. So he still retains a lot of power. And it reminds me a little bit of Sam Cooke, in the sense of not so much that because he sold the company, but he's still operating and is able to make influences on the direction of the company. Square's going to control the financial aspect of Tidal. So that is really important. And also his wife is still a co-owner, and so are some of the major artists that signed up to be co-owners. And so there's still a lot of influence that he has over the direction of the company. So to me, it's a sellout on paper, but when you look into the finer details, it's actually a very nuanced and low-key rise up. And
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that you did a very good job of summarizing it. I don't think that there's too much more that I could add. I just wanted to actually had a question. I wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of people are frustrated with the sale, and I think that their frustrations are rooted in one of the ideas that you talked about. You said that Jay-Z now has a seat at the table, and I think that a lot of people are looking at that as, well, you have a seat at the table, but like, what if you owned your own house, type of thing. So like, what do you think about that? What do you think about the notion of owning a segment or having some level of influence in, I mean, let's be honest, a white company versus being the primary shareholder in a black one, or a self-owned company?
So that's a really good point. And I think about famous African-American business owners like a Madam C.J. Walker, who owned and as well as ran one of the most successful hair product companies of all time. And she was a juggernaut in terms of Black hair care products in her prime. And I think that it is always, typically, I believe it's better to own your products, especially, and to own companies, especially when I look to how, a really good movie that kind of touched on this was Good Hair by Chris Rock, and where he kind of showed the business side of hair care and Black hair care products. And he explained in the movie how between like the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of Black owned hair care product businesses that were absorbed by companies like Revlon and became under their umbrella. And so the Black ownership aspect left the hands of the community, left the hands of the Black community, and was now under the umbrella of a different community that had just goals and aspirations to make money and didn't really care so much about the vision of trying to provide a good product for Black people. And I do ultimately have a problem with that. But I also understand that I think Jay-Z, I'm trying to think of the big picture. And so although I have a problem with him selling the company and reducing the Black ownership footprint, I do think that still his wife owns a stake of the company. So the Black ownership aspect isn't completely gone. And he's trying to pivot himself in a position to affect more change. And I think because Square is a financial company, and I read somewhere that they are trying to ensure that artists are still compensated correctly, he's trying to make sure he has his hand in the pot, while maybe trying to put himself in a position to do something else major with that $297 million check that he just got. And so from that standpoint, I say to myself, Sean Carter, I don't necessarily like the fact that you sold Tidal, but I kind of see maybe some of the moves that you're trying to make. And I hope that you continue to push for the Black entrepreneurship mindset. And ultimately, he has sold the company to individuals that he believes are going to do what's in the best interest of a title in terms of properly compensating the artist. And I believe in somebody like a Jack Dorsey. He is pretty, I think, idealistic, but he's also he makes decisions, and he has a path that is grounded in reality. So yeah.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it as well. I think that you articulated a lot of points that I ascribe to, and a lot of things that I feel. I don't know. I have some doubts, because I do think that ultimately or at least I look at Jay-Z as a capitalist. I think that whether there's anything wrong with that or not, I think that he may have goals that align in terms of the advancements of Black people and of artists, but I think that in many ways it is about making money for him, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that there is some debate to be had amongst people of color and other people as well about which one of those sides is the biggest motivator. And I think that's something only Jay-Z knows, but it's an interesting question to ask, because at the same time, I think he also sold 50% of his champagne brand, and that along with the Square transaction jumped his net worth by 40%. So it's like that there is some financial motivation to doing this, but he has also come out and said that it's primarily for the benefit of artists as well, because Tidal is famous for primarily offering artists a larger rate of pay per stream than many other streaming services. So I think that, like you said, I hope that that's continuing to be the case. And I think that with his wife and, artists that he's worked with being on the board, hopefully that still maintains, or hopefully Tidal still maintains that level of compensation for artists. But in some ways it kind of does. I want to get your opinion on this as well. It kind of feels a little bit like the NFL deal in a way, where I think that the NFL has had a very checkered past in terms of race relations, I guess you could say, with the Black community and their treatment of players and their, insistence on certain policies, especially when it comes to the national anthem. So I think that when people saw Jay-Z lining up to partner with the NFL, that they thought that was going to be like a groundbreaking move, and I don't think it really has been up to this point. So I want to get your opinion on what do you think, or do you think there are any parallels between his move in joining the Square board of directors and selling Tidal and his move with the NFL?
So unfortunately, I'm not as well versed on the whole NFL deal that he made, but I'll say it from this perspective. We can have either a pessimistic view, a pragmatic view, or just a kind of a realistic view of exactly what is going on. Ultimately, he is saying, okay, at the end of the day, the NFL makes a lot of money. The owners of the NFL make a crap ton of money, and the NFL players make a good amount of money as well. And he is trying to put himself in a position where he has influence on those decisions being made. Now, at the end of the day, if you're going to make a deal, you have to provide value to the company in order to enrich them as well as to enrich yourself. From that standpoint, I definitely think Jay-Z is, trying to enrich himself. At the same time, I also think that he recognizes the influence that he has in the Black community. And I hope he doesn't take that for granted. That's just my hope, that he doesn't take that for granted, and that he does things that are in the best interest of promoting Black culture in a positive way. And ultimately, he's trying to set the example of, hey, it's not, if we want to really see change, we have to put ourselves in positions of power to make change. that comes with having financial capital, that comes with having the resources to kind of wedge away into an institution that has really been kind of a isolated fraternity of multimillionaires and billionaires that are trying to grow their wealth and their generational wealth in whatever ways they see fit, whereas the players are just kind of the cattle that is being herded along to continue to enrich them in mass. And so I see Jay-Z trying to interject himself into that equation, trying to be try to play the game by their rules essentially, and try to make decisions hopefully that are in the best interest of the players as well as the artists that work with him. And so from that standpoint, I just feel hopeful, but I also take it all with a grain of salt. Everybody's just trying to make money as well. And I'm hoping that he's just not selling out, but he's just trying to put himself in position to just put people on essentially. You hear about how he kind of was pulling strings. He, along with guys like Stephen A. Smith, were, I guess, maybe behind the scenes trying to pull strings to get Kaepernick another chance to get into the NFL. Mm-hmm. And, Kaepernick, I don't know all the specifics of that story, but for whatever reason, he didn't 100% hold up his end of the bargain. He has his reasons for it. Everybody else has their reasons for why they didn't get to the workout and tryout that he set up. But at the end of the day, I think he's been trying to put people in positions to make change from within and to, I guess, be a part of the system as opposed to just trying to revolutionize everything.
Right. I think that's a good view on it. I think that's the most you can hope for, and I think that how you see the situation probably boils down to how much of an optimist, like you said, or a pessimist that you are. I think that Jay-Z's record of public service in terms of his and his wife's contributions to the Black community are well documented and well appreciated. But I do think that there are some people that look at his business dealings sometimes and think that there is more self-interest than acting in the interest of the people at large. So I think that your perception of Tidal or the NFL deal is largely hinging upon your perception of Jay-Z and probably your outlook on these kinds of dealings as a whole,
Yeah, definitely. And I think ultimately the goal is, as the African American community wants to be in more positions of power within the United States system, you hope that Jay-Z and Beyonce are hiring, Black people. You hope that they're trying to empower Black people that are around them that are looking to also make more changes themselves. And, between Jay-Z getting artists like a Kanye West, giving him a platform on his record label, and Kanye West now doing everything that he's doing, you hope to see more of that in terms of just the business aspect of putting people that look like you in positions of power. And at the end of the day, they have to take the keys and run with it and do what they please. But at least you put them in a position to get an opportunity. And that's what that's one of the beautiful things that we hope people do, is take advantages of opportunities that are given to them and running with it. That's the most you can always hope for. Some people some people might squander it, some people might fail, but at least you try to put them in positions to succeed,
Right. Yeah. Last question, and we'll probably close this one out, but I'm curious. We didn't really, I don't know if we touched on this, but I wanted to get your opinion on Jay-Z's now position on the board of directors of Square. And, we talked about how you view this in terms of optimism or pessimism, but like, what do you think that means? Because I have no idea. That's why I'm asking the question. But what do you think that means going forward for Square as a company, but also for Jay-Z?
So I have a quote here from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, that Dorsey revealed that Square bought Tidal to find new, quote unquote, new ways for artists to support their work. They also go on to say that Square and Tidal will continue to empower artists and create a more sustainable, collaborative, and beneficial music industry. And so the idea now is that although Square purchased Tidal, these companies will still act independently, although decisions will come from the Square board, I assume, because Tidal is going to be, I believe, a subsidiary of the Square platform. I'm not sure where Twitter lands. I think Twitter is an independent company as well, and so it's a little bit different. But yeah, so Square and Twitter are two separate companies as well. Now, the thing about Tidal being under the Square umbrella is that Jay-Z still has a lot of influence on Tidal from the back end, not necessarily as majority stake owner, but being on the board of directors. And so between his board of directors vote coming from up top on Square and Beyonce's co-ownership of Tidal, the platform itself, there's still a massive amount of influence that power couple has over the direction of a Tidal. And so I think when you're on the board of directors, when they want to make decisions about the fate of a company, they all have to come to a vote and a consensus, whatever they kind of agree to it to be within their their membership clause. And he still has a major say in what happens going forward, ultimately. So again, it's not like, oh, I completely own it and I 100% have full authority on the direction of the company. He still has a piece. And again, he could use that money that he's made and generated and flip it to something else, which is what he's always done. And so I'm gonna and do with,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. I mean, it's a complicated, nuanced conversation, but I mean, like you said, I hope the best that we can do is hope that going forward, the merging of these two entities will result in benefiting, the artists and the people. Let's go ahead and pivot to another kind of conversation. You saw Coming to America this weekend. Before we get into spoilers, I can already hear the exhale. Before we get into spoilers, go ahead and just give your overall thoughts of the movie for me.
My overall thoughts of the movie is, I'm just going to say this: I will not let Coming to America spoil my feelings of the original Coming to America. To me, these are two separate entities, and I will not mix up the two. I will forever quote lines from the original Coming to America because I've seen it dozens and dozens of times, and I will wash away everything that I saw from the sequel in my mind. I'm gonna scrub my memory of what I saw. I commend, the actors and actresses in their attempt to make a sequel. I think when you're making a sequel to something that is a cult classic, it is always challenging to kind of capture everything. And I think Coming to America kind of exemplified it, because you are trying to stay true to the origin, but you're also trying to create something new and bring a new audience and generation into something that a previous audience and generation loved so dearly and held so true to their heart. So in that sense, I think that it was a monumental task to even consider doing a sequel and what that would look like. And I think the sequel didn't happen for so long because of all these considerations that they had to make. But ultimately, I think the movie, the jokes weren't as funny as the original, and just not as funny as I thought it should have been. There was an overuse of cameos, I believe. They retconned a lot of things that happened in the original movie, and they tried to also be a little more woke, but not in a way that I kind of saw coming. And so overall, I just didn't enjoy the movie as much as I really wanted to, because I actually wanted to enjoy the movie, and I found myself not being able to, and just laughing at the absurdity of it all. So that's kind of my hot take. Unfortunately, I love Eddie. I love all the actors and actresses individually in that movie. I just didn't like what they were able to piece together.
Right. Oh man. I I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I don't think it was bad. Like I can't go as far as to say like, oh, it was trash, it was horrible, but like it just felt unnecessary. That's
Mm,
really like the best word I can just use to describe the movie is it just felt unnecessary. Like we'll get into it, but there's so much about the film that just didn't feel like it needed to happen.
mm,
Like and like you said, there was
yeah.
this charm with the original and with the style of comedy that just worked so well. And maybe it was lightning in a bottle, or maybe like the fish out of water uh element of having them in New York City was maybe more of a easier thing to write for the writers, and it was easier for the jokes to land. But for whatever reason, with Coming to America, the sequel, it just seemed like none of the stuff, not, I won't say none, a lot of the things that worked about the original did not work with the sequel. And like I was like you, man, like I really like I try to do two things. I tried to not compare it to the original as I was watching, as hard as that is. And then I like you, I also tried really hard to like it. I tried really hard to like it, and it just didn't. It didn't happen. But it's tough because I really do genuinely like want to. I don't like taking a dump on Black movies. I really don't. But
Mm,
sometimes like it's just necessary because it's like, unlike this movie, it's necessary to just be honest about how much you really didn't like it. But it wasn't all bad.
right.
So I guess we'll go into the review officially. Spoilers from here
Yeah.
on
Spoiler
out.
alert. Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's start with the good. What did you like about the movie? Like whether it was a plot point or a
Okay.
character, like what did you like about the movie?
I liked the overall aesthetic of the movie. It was very glamorous. It was very shiny. It was very bright. Um, the costumes were on point. You could tell that the filming, high production value on the filming aspect of it. And I also just love seeing the gang back together. I love the fact that they were able to get, like maybe, probably close to like 90% of the original major cast. The only people that weren't there were Daryl and Lisa's sister.
Yeah.
Um, but besides that, they got everybody. They got James Earl Jones, John Amos, Louis Anderson. Like they they had McDonald's in Africa. I thought that was hilarious. I love that they paid a lot of homage to the old jokes, but I also
Stay
have a problem
positive.
with that. But to
Stay
stay
positive, my friend.
positive.
Stay positive. At least for like the next
um,
like 2.5 minutes.
yeah, I loved I love some of the. So yeah, you know what, that's about. And just seeing Eddie Murphy back, him doing a movie again was just fun, because I always, Eddie Murphy in the 80s and 90s was the epitome of funny. And so just seeing him back in a movie, seeing him back in roles, being creative, being himself and funny, those are all elements of the movie that I enjoyed personally. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were a couple of things that I really enjoyed. We share a couple of things. I think that Eddie Murphy was good to see him on screen. Watching Dolomite Is My Name, I really enjoyed that movie actually. But also it was good to see
Yeah.
him in this role. It's good to see him back doing what he does best, and I think that he had a lot of really great moments in the film. There was like I think that there were moments in the film that actually did make me laugh. Not as many as the original, obviously.
Right.
Just like little things sometimes, like when he walked, he had messed up and he walked into the room with his wife was in bed and she was like, "Are you sure you're in the right room?" And I laughed because my lady was right there, and I was like, "Man, that sounds so that sounds so familiar." But yeah, I think that there were some moments that landed. Wesley Snipes made me laugh a couple of times. I thought he had some funny moments. I
Yeah.
think I guess you could say King Akeem's redemption arc was cool.
Right.
In terms of where he started at the beginning of the film and then where he ended up, and his relationship with his daughter, I thought was nice. Actually, I did like some of the cameos. I think that the Kimbe Mutombo one was funny, or like a couple of the other cameos were good.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure we'll come up with some other positives as we go along. But all right, man, let's get to the fun part. What was what were the parts of the movie that you didn't like?
Okay. So as much as I individually, again, enjoyed seeing everybody who showed up in the movie, I could not stand how it felt like a hobbled mess of bringing 80s culture and references into a 2021 audience. And it's like, all right, was this movie made for this new generation, or was it made for the generation that appreciated the original? You know, like, and the thing that frustrated me most is like, okay, are you guys coming up with come up with new jokes? Why are we rehashing everything that happened in the original? If you're going to do that, then you should have just made a straight that didn't really that borrowed from the past more so.
Yeah, reiterate
Between
that
the
point one more time.
Candy
You
and
broke up a
Matumbo
little.
cameos. Oh yeah, so like, why make a sequel that is going to borrow so much from the original than just make a sequel that is more of a direct link to the original, as opposed to something that is trying to maybe be new and stand on its own feet, but is really held up by the framework, joke wise, and of the past. So you have them rehashing everything and doing a whole flashback scene with different camera angles of the original, where they're literally taking like screenshots and clips of the original movie and putting it in
Oh
the
my
new
God.
movie. I'm like what kind of lazy filming is this, and
Yeah, we saw it
cinematography
already.
is
We don't need
this?
to like see a flashback of
Yeah.
what we've already seen.
Yeah, I don't need to see those girls rapping again. I don't need to see like,
My name is
like yeah, I appreciated the fact that they were able to get those actresses again. But I'm like, come on, what? Just come up with something new. Using
Randy
art.
Watson
I
was
don't
funny.
see
Randy Watson was
Yeah,
funny. He was hilarious.
that was very funny. Yes, and I appreciated that. But then you go out of nowhere and you bring in a Michael Blackson in a PG-13 movie. Michael Blackson does not need to be in a PG-13 movie. I need to hear him dropping mother F-bombs this and N-words that, and really get your blood boiling from the fact that he's making fun of you. Michael Blackson, just the way he came in introducing Wesley Snipes, I'm like, come on, you could have done more with someone hilarious as him. He could have been Prince Akeem's illegitimate son, and that would have been an amazing movie. Just him, just ripping.
I wouldn't watch that movie. I wouldn't watch that movie.
That would have been a lot more fun and entertaining to see. Just Michael Blackson just ripping into everything sacred about coming to America, and just going off and ad-libbing. But so underutilization of some talent in that respect. Again, putting in the salt and pepper and redoing that whole scene, like, I don't mind that, but there's got to be some kind of cap on cameos. Like, it can't be a new cameo every 10 minutes using a different making another joke that's an homage to the past, but still trying to move the story forward. It's just going back to there was just a lot of back and forth in that element.
You didn't like a Midnight Train
He
to Zamunda?
oh goodness.
He's
So
a mighty good
before
king.
I'm gonna let you get on that point. I did not really understand what they did with James Earl Jones's character. I understand that maybe he was a little physically limited, but I was just confused as to the ceremonial funeral process where he had all those performances done for him, but he was in a coffin, like waiting to die. And he just died after this whole like just performance. That was so confusing to me. I'm like, is this typical for this society? What is exactly is going on here?
Yeah.
Like
It didn't
just
land
certain,
emotionally.
yeah. I'm like, this is a legend. This is probably going to be one of his last movies, and you just have it kind of go out in sputters and just kind of overall just conceptually confusing. I couldn't follow that point. And so they were just yeah. So that was some of my frustrating takeaways. Oh, and another element was that I saw coming that frustrated me was how they tried to distance themselves from patriarchy and just this whole. I saw that element coming from a mile away, where it's like, oh, Zamunda, it has to be a prince, it has to be this, it has to be that. It's like, okay, we can understand that, and you don't have to beat us over the head with that. You can display that organically and show how Eddie Murphy's oldest daughter is really the one who's most equipped to kind of Prince Akeem's oldest daughter is really one who's most well equipped to take over the kingdom, and that it just doesn't have to be so male centric. And the fact that all they had was daughters and him have allowing the kingdom to be ruled by a woman was somehow a no-no. So yeah, I like that arc, but I think you could have crafted it a little more nuanced, and you didn't have to really beat us over the head with it.
Yeah, I have a list.
All right, yeah, let's hear it.
I think that a lot of things that worked involved the original cast, and so now obviously a lot of the callbacks were overdone, but I think that a lot of things that related to the original movie did work, but everything involving his son did not work. It was so forced, like even from the
Yeah,
beginning, like with the conversation that he has with his where he's on the job interview,
yeah,
and the weird, like, that conversation just didn't, it just seemed like it was just shoehorned in there as some kind of, like, you remember, like, I don't remember where it was from. It might have been Don't Be a Menace, but like a message, like that's kind of what it felt like for like some of these uh events that happened in the movie. Like, it was just so blatant that they were just like trying to nail home a point, and that it started with that. And then of course, like,
yeah. And I actually enjoyed Colin Jost in that, but I just didn't enjoy Prince Akeem's son in it. And I
yeah,
thought that was funny. I thought he delivered his lines, and I love Colin Jost. So I was like, this is funny, but this dynamic isn't funny.
yeah,
Please continue.
it was just awkward, like. And then there were so
Yeah,
many things that were rushed. Like, I found myself thinking back to the original movie, and I asked myself if the romance in the original movie felt as rushed as the romance between Prince Akeem's son and the lady that was a barber at the beginning of the movie. Like, that just felt like when they were at the altar in Queens, and he was like, "I love her." I was like, I don't believe that. Like, how and why? Like, it was
right.
really, it felt very, it just felt very forced. And
Right.
there were a couple of instances, like we were talking about them shoehorning things in, like there were some really weird like sponsorship moments
Yeah, like
as well.
Pepsi is the like I thought that was I like that element to be tongue in cheek, but gosh, how
It
many
was on the
times can you sell
nose.
out in a movie?
Yeah, it was like a Friskies. Let me tune up my Spotify real quick. And it was just like, it was just so many moments that were just so. I mean, I
Cash
guess you got to
grabby.
pay. I guess you got to pay the bills, but uh,
Yeah.
and I just want to talk about like I have one more bad thing. And it's probably
Okay.
like one of the worst things in the movie for me, but the story behind how his son came into existence, like I just how and why is that the best thing that you could come up with for the origin of how he ended up here? And then also like where the movie operates in this space where it's very aware that it's not the 1980s anymore, and in 2021 that there's certain things that you have to address like patriarchy and other things, but that was sexual assault.
And we just kind of laughed it
I don't mean to
off.
chuckle, but I just chuckle. But like they make it seem like it's a funny moment in the movie, but in reality, like he got a contact high and he was assaulted, and then like she's almost like rewarded for that because she gets a
Mm,
trip to Africa for it. But I mean,
yeah.
it just doesn't work. I feel like there's so many, especially in the current climate, there's so many better ways that you can find a way for him to come into existence. Like they both could have just been drunk or something, and then that's how that happened. It didn't need to be like something. The thing about, was it a rhino? There was some joke about a
Yeah.
rhino.
Yeah, like
Like
a
I
rhino came into the room.
don't,
Oh my, yeah.
started
Yeah.
ramming me. It's like let's not talk about ramming in this context. It doesn't work.
Mm,
But I mean, there
yeah.
were lots of things. But I guess did you have any more bad things before I wanted to have a brief conversation, or I had a question for you about the movie as a whole. But is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Oh, so other things I enjoyed. I did enjoy Pastor Brown's no, Reverend Brown's sock shoes off in the middle of Queens, going off as a preacher. I thought that was pretty funny as well. Um and yeah, the movie had moments where it made me chuckle, moments where it made me laugh, but then at a lot of points I was just laughing at the movie itself, not really the world that it tried to put me in. And I just couldn't find myself being in, the story. A lot of times I enjoy a movie that I feel like I'm a part of the story. I feel like I'm moving along with the characters. And because of just the silly nature of a lot of it, I was just like sitting back like, man, like what is going on here? I was laughing at the elements of the movie. And anytime a movie does that to me, I know it's not good. So yeah, that's just the overall takeaway. But yeah, go on to the questions that you have.
Yeah, I feel like for me, some of the elements of the depiction of a, even though the country's fictional, some of the depictions of Africa felt very stereotypical and sometimes like a little borderline offensive. Like Wesley Snipes' character at one point is talking to child soldiers and reading them a book, which is like a very real, it's a very real thing. And I don't want to sound
Yeah.
like I'm being like super overly politically correct and like, because I'm not that person, but there were just so many things in the movie that just seemed like blatant, like really just kind of thoughtless
Mm.
moments for me. So I just wanted to know if there were any, as we close, any observations that you had as far as the fictional depiction of an African country.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Maybe I need to rewatch it, but I'm not sure what part of Africa the Kingdom of Zamunda is in. But depending on where it is, you're gonna see you might see a jungle animal like a lion. But that, the regional aspect of it has to kind of line up with where it is, right? And I think that there are not lions everywhere in Africa. So that, that there's that element of people assuming things about a fictional country that might not actually be true, depending on where it is geographically. But besides that, that point that you brought up about the child soldier and kind of being tongue in cheek about an issue that is really devastating to the continent and a very, very real issue. For them to just kind of make a throwaway joke about that is kind of a joke that doesn't land any merit or show the gravity of how bad that situation is and how awful it is. And, getting somebody like a Wesley Snipes to just really make fun of it and make light of it without, again, paying attention to just the more finer details and the nuances of it is just, I'm okay with comedy, but comedy, you should at least try to be aware of what exactly it is that you're making fun of. Mm-hmm. And yeah, also Wesley Snipes's depiction of an African general was just hilariously silly and it just didn't land for me. I was like, mm-hmm. What is this guy doing? This is very inauthentic. I don't buy it. This is just another cameo and big name star that was shooting. I'm like, okay, so you were in Dolomite and now you're in this. Is like, does Eddie have some kind of contractual obligation to put you on or something? Like, what exactly is going on here? You really didn't have to be here for this story, But that, so yeah, that's kind of some thoughts I had on that. What else did you think?
Yeah, I just thought it was a weird depiction, especially like with the monarchy versus like the rebels. Yeah, angle was a little odd because again, that's also like a very real thing. Yes, like rebel armies in Africa,
and that's very true. And to me, it just it's like, oh wait, so you guys you're the kingdom of Zamunda. I thought it was, powerful empire, or at least a very self-sufficient nation. But it just seems like, no, it's a nation that kind of, for the fact that there's a rebel army signifies that this is a monarchy that isn't in touch with the people. And so it's a very, it's a royalty class that is very much about enriching itself and not really caring about the average citizen, because that's how rebel armies get started. It's not just some phenomena of Africa. It's like, mm-hmm. They start these, these people gain power because there's a power vacuum. And it's like, wait, does Zamunda not have its own standing army? How is a rebel leader, going to just come into the palace without any and make all these threats? And it's like, mm-hmm. If you're a rebel leader and you have all this power, why do you want to now give it up and make peace by marrying your daughter or son off to the king? It's like, just usurp him yourself. Just motivations. I'm like, did you guys really think this out? Was it literally just like Wesley and Eddie and Arsenio in a room, just talking about stuff and not doing, the proper background research to actually bring justice to all of these complex concepts? Or did they just hear it and like, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's just throw it in?
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we're taking it's a comedy, so I don't know like if I'm just going too deep into the weeds about it. But yeah, overall, yeah, it was just again, I'll just say my overall opinion is I just thought it wasn't really a necessary sequel. It doesn't put a damper on the original or change the way I feel about it, but it just felt like it didn't need to happen. But yeah, that's our review of Coming to America. Thank you again, guys, for joining us on our podcast. We really appreciate you listening, and we'll be back with you next week. Stay tuned.
Yes. Have a good day, guys. All blessings, positivity. Put some good things back into the world. We hope that we could make you laugh, and enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, think a little too. Y'all be easy. Peace out.